So, I'd like to welcome, first of all, Chuck McVicker, one of our key sponsors from Ventix. Chuck, you've flown over from the US for this conference, which has a predominantly European feel. We've had, I think, 7 or 8 of Europe's regulatory bodies giving presentations alongside some of the other manufacturers and institutes. How have you found the differences, and what have you learned from the European perspective?
Okay. Thank you, Martin. I've learned quite a bit during this conference. Up until recently, my exposure's been in the United States, and the first talk from the first day is the challenge of rationalization among regulatory authorities and standards and codes. Something we don't deal with in the U.S., but the European market is very important to Ventex, so I'm very pleased to begin to learn these lessons.
Mm-hmm. And in terms of the strategies that you've got in place for, well, let's say for European drive, how does that differ to maybe operations that you have in the US, and what plans do you have for the future?
Okay. I think the bases are pretty much the same, but dealing in Europe, what it does require us to do is to certainly be much more attuned to the different cultures, having offices staffed by local country people in Paris, in the UK, and in addition to Europe, we now have a base of operation in China. So again, taking the knowledge and background of the nuclear business and our software to these other locations is a challenge for us, but something we're working through pretty expeditiously.
Okay. Well, I'd like to thank you for your views. To those of you that are watching this interview, there'll be other materials as well. But if you have any comments or any feedback that you'd like to present to Ventix, please do so via the official conference website, and we'd be more than happy. And hopefully, we can give you some some genuine feedback from Ventix themselves. Chuck, thanks very much for your time.
Thank you, Martin.
Expressed an interest in learning more and perhaps even collaborating in the future as an international organisation. Could you give us an insight into any proposed collaborations you may have with international organisations across Europe?
Certainly. It's very interesting. When we first started, we were very much UK based, but as the agenda's grown, more and more we're being approached by companies overseas to see if we can help them. The main interest to date has been from the Middle East, particularly from Abu Dhabi, and we've been out 3 times now to discuss with them how we could potentially take the concept of the nuclear skills passport over to the Middle East so that they can actually use the UK standards we've developed and perhaps set up their own system of the skills passport. But since we've started doing that, a lot of other, particularly Eastern European countries, have been expressing an interest. And the conversation with the lady from Romania last night, I think, was very interesting. And it's good because people are looking at the same thing. It's around standards. It's around pushing up excellence. So what we've just done is we've appointed a young person, in fact an Indian gentleman, to do a detailed piece of research for us now onto what the potential international market could be. So he's called Ash, and he's starting in January, and he is actually going to do a proper analysis and start some of the leads and contacts. And in fact, one of your delegates yesterday was from India, interestingly, and he came up and said, have you done anything with India to date? Which we haven't, but I think having an international person working for us will make that a lot easier and a lot better. So I'm going to put the 2 of them in contact.
Okay, thank you. And I'd like to say to anybody viewing this that via our conference website there will be plenty of other materials, but if you do express an interest and would like to know more, please feel free to leave your comments via the website, and we'll be more than happy to pass those on to the National Skills Academy in the UK. Thank you, Jean.
Thank you very much.
Okay, so on the 3rd day of the I.N.E.D forum, I'd like to introduce Jan Haverkamp from Greenpeace. We've had a lot of issues being put back and forth over the last couple of days. You've had a lot of input yourself. What's your general feeling, or what can you explain about what you can possibly take away from the events over the last couple of days?
What I found interesting yesterday was in the panel discussion where we touched the question of the how and the why. I think today, the day where we're looking a lot at technique, we're concentrating on the how, and for me that is absorbing a lot of information that's going to and fro about ideas about improvement of safety, etc. Yesterday, day before, we touched a bit more also the question of the why, which of course for me as an environmental activist is the more important question. We're working on increased safety, but will we need it in the end? Will there indeed be that renaissance that everybody here seems to be convinced of, except for me and a few others? Will that renaissance take place? If there is new build, yes, we will need the safety levels that are discussed now. The political question of the why is already relating back, and we touched it also yesterday, but that will cost. That will come with a cost. Is society willing to pay that cost? And if society isn't willing to pay that cost, they're probably going to look to alternatives. I am always a little bit surprised to see how little that political discussion is in the awareness when we're talking technique. I think that within the nuclear sector we are convinced of the fact that safety comes first, and we're engineering to that goal. But at the moment we are at the point that we also have to look to a bit further on, does it still have sense to continue? Or are we indeed seeing what I'm expecting, a slow demise of nuclear power, and coming with now the fifth possible design on the European market, the Mitsubishi design? I don't think it will bring very much extra to the discussion. When I saw today's discussions about the safety levels of the EU APWR, I think, yeah, well, it's again a fifth kid on the block, roughly the same criteria, but we see already with the APR, with the EPR, and the problems that the EPR is bringing at this moment in Europe in construction, that is not going to change the market. A new fifth contender in tenders discussions, the prices will not be able to go down that much anymore. Everybody's already working on the lowest cost possible. And we've seen it yesterday, and I found it very interesting that the margin for further cost reductions are not so big anymore. We've got ideas about it, but we're not going to see 30-40% cost reductions that would be necessary if nuclear ever were to be competitive.
I just want to touch on something quickly. In the build-up to the event, I was expecting quite an aggressive approach from Greenpeace, and when you actually came to the stage and presented your paper, it was informative, it was well thought out. We've actually had comments from some of our speakers that, to quote, "You know your stuff." What I did also hear from one of the speakers was quite a poignant effort, and I think that he mentioned that you or Greenpeace have been asking the same questions for 10 years, and for 10 years they've been giving you the same answers, but nothing's really progressing. Now, in short words, what's your take on all that?
Well, the interesting thing is that the same answers still don't add up. 10 or 30 years ago, we came with questions about radioactive waste. And we're now 30 years, for me then, 30 years down the line after the point that I asked that question for the first time when I was sitting in university to my professor. And I'm still getting the same answers. Strangely enough, the same answer is deep geological disposal. Over the last few weeks, we've seen that there is still a lot of questions around deep geological disposal, whether it will work or not. And with that, the whole question of radioactive waste is in its full strength still on the table. That is the same for safety. Yes, of course, current reactors aren't anymore reactors like in 1980s. And everybody seems to forget that in the early 1980s, the RBMK was always considered to be one of the best reactor types considering safety, and after 86 everybody stopped talking about that, and I think with a good reason. I mean, there were flaws that we hadn't thought of in the early 1980s. For us, for instance, one of the questions that we had then is, are these reactors safe? Is now returning. Yes, we've progressed. We've seen an evolution, and we're talking about chances now of once in a million year or once in the 10 million years on larger accidents. It's basically not a different discussion than we had 30 years ago. It is a factor 10 different, but Chernobyl happened in spite of that factor 10 difference, which still is a tiny chance that we should not have lived through in 1986. So the fact that you see people now still asking questions, and we had it today again, when in the last presentation that was about the Czech situation, a remark about the protection against a large aircraft impact. Well, we are not talking about. We also come with new questions. One of the new questions we come up with is that we also say, well, it's not only large aircraft. We talk also about charged heads, rocket attacks that can be done by well-organized civilians. But if we look at the aircraft thing, after 9/11 that came up, and I still see denial here that that is a reality. And
may I just quickly ask, though, my opinion personally, if somebody was to crash a large aircraft into a nuclear power plant, do you not think they'd have done it by now if they really wanted to?
It's not easy. You have to prepare it very well. We've seen it at Twin Towers. There is still not entire clarity about it, whether the fifth airplane wasn't targeting for a nuclear power station. We know that Osama bin Laden personally didn't like it. That's a lot of theory around it, a lot of speculation. No, I don't think necessarily it will have happened. The choice of targets for terrorists has its own lines and its own dynamics. You don't know, but what you have to know is, are you willing to take any risk with a possible consequence that is comparable to what happened in Chernobyl? And that discussion is a discussion that even 20 years after Chernobyl is continuously ongoing. We now still see also people from the nuclear industry saying, yeah, but Chernobyl wasn't that bad. And I, coming from a background where I did have to work with children that are suffering under radiation-related diseases from Chernobyl, having to work with farmers in Wales that still have to cull part of their cattle because of cesium contamination of the meat. I mean, for me, that's a completely different situation, and I say no. Now, therefore, that question of terrorism remains actual, and therefore you cannot run over it as a nuclear researcher and say, well, airplane crash, well, we have to do it, but we don't really know why. We do know why since 9/11. We have to be prepared, and you talk about extremely concentrated radiation. Like I just said, I mean, I've just seen the video images from this morning where the Castor transports with spent nuclear fuel are passing over a road and passing a Geiger counter, and I see the needle going up to a level where I thought, I don't think it was supposed to go that far already, and that is the issue where we're dealing with. If you concentrate on the technique your whole life, you sometimes tend to forget it, and you need organizations like Greenpeace to remind you of that reality. And I think most of the people in the sector are good professionals, and they are aware of it most of the time. Some of it forget it more easy than others. Some political circumstances, some cultures forget it more easily than others. I mean, the easy way that Bulgarians talk about transport of radioactive waste to Mayak, one of the most radioactive polluting factories in the world, it sends me shivers down my spine. Yeah? If I talk here with people from CA or from ASN or IRSN from France, they will say nobody should send anything there. Yeah? So there is within the industry, there are differences of opinions also. And I think it's important to have that debate, and I think that Greenpeace plays its role there. And it's not. It doesn't make sense for me. I've got always a banner with me, but it doesn't make sense for me to hang out a banner. Here we are there to discuss, and that's very important.
I agree. I mean, there's lots of pertinent points that we could discuss. I think for now it's nice to get your opinion. I'd just like to say to the people watching, if you do have any other comments that you'd like to perhaps pose, then please use the website that will be accompanying this interview. We can pass those questions on to Jan, and hopefully we can get some answers for you. Jan, thanks very much for your time. Thank you. So I'd like to welcome Jerzy Greenblatt, Director from Lloyd's Register. Jerzy, you've been here for the last 3 days. We've had a lot of interesting, different presentations. I'd like to get a brief insight into your role within the nuclear sector with Lloyd's Register.
I'm Nuclear Business Director in Lloyd's Register, and my responsibility is to promote the business and global business of Lloyd's Register into the nuclear. Lloyd's Register have been in nuclear since early 50s, especially in UK, when the program of nuclear started in UK. So we have been there from Calderwall, and we continue to supply services to the industry. And recently, Lloyd's Register, in their ambition was to broaden their spectrum of services, so they purchased several new companies, among them Human Engineering, that added roughly 50 experts in human factors, and also ScanPower, that had a long experience in nuclear, especially in nuclear consulting, safety, and especially in PSA, where our software, Respectrum, is currently used by more than 50% of nuclear power plants in the world. So my mission is to global promote how Lloyd's can help in the peaceful development of nuclear industry worldwide.
And in terms of this, is obviously it's a pro-nuclear forum, looking at the renaissance and obviously the challenges over the next 10 to 15 to 20 years. Are there any particular strategies that you may have in place, not just for the nuclear sector, but that could also tie in with some of the other industries that you're involved in as well?
We are working in the field of safety, and for us, our Lloyd's Register motto is "Life Matters," and this is something that we have been involved with since 250 years. So we have a long tradition of working, protecting human lives, protecting assets, and safety is overarching issue in whatever we are doing. And we are not active only in nuclear, we are active in maritime, in transportation, and in process industry. My mission is in nuclear, and I see that with the growing interest in nuclear all over the world, there are very important issues that need to be addressed, and where Lloyd's can play a significant role globally. And safety is, of course, the most important one. And I am aiming for especially new countries, emerging countries, that they establish safety culture and the safety regulations not that established, we can help them to develop it.
Thank you, Jerzy. And once again, to anybody that's interested or would like to give any particular feedback, please do so via the official conference website, and I'm sure the guys at Lloyd's Register would be happy to answer any questions you may have. Thank you very much, Jerzy.
Thank you.
Thank you. So I'm here with Daniel Suarez from UPC University here in Barcelona. Daniel, you've been here for the last 3 days, and you're what we would call the future of the next nuclear generation. What are the key things that you think, as somebody who's getting into the industry, that you have taken away from the presentation of the last 3 days?
Well, this presentation has been really interesting for us, for the students, because well, for the graduates, because it has been really nice talks about what the regulatory bodies and the business and the industries is working on, and what the kind of laws that they have and they have to follow. And today we've been talking about new designs that especially like these small module reactors, which I don't remember the name of the company, but it was really interesting about how all this is developing.
Yeah. And last night we had a presentation by Jean Llewellyn, who's the CEO of the National Skills Academy. And obviously they've put things in place for the UK, but there was a mention of them perhaps cooperating with other European countries. In your opinion, do you think that that's something that the graduates in Spain could benefit from?
Yeah, sure. I think Spanish situation in the nuclear industry is not quite good, because they are completely stopped. There are no new projects, just a few things about waste management, but the big things are moving into the rest of Europe and mostly in the UK. And I've heard many British guys who are saying there's a big lack of skilled students. And for us it's really interesting to listen this kind of opinions. But we haven't really found these opportunities for graduates yet. but we'll hope they are showing up soon.
Well, we've got viewers of many ages out there, but if there are, younger people that want to either ask more from some of the people we've got here, or alternatively with some of the other presentations from the various educational authorities, please feel free to post your comments on the official conference website. Daniel, thanks very much for your time.
Thank you, Martin.
Good time. Thanks. So the event's just finished. I'm sat here with Makoto Tayama from Mitsubishi. It's been a good 3 days. Very interesting presentation from yourself as well. I just want to get a short insight into your feelings over the 3 days and and what you can take away from this.
Okay, this is my first attendant for this kind of meeting, and I gradually grasped the situation in Europe because we are rather newcomer to Europe, but we in Japan already have a long history of constructing and designing our PWRs in Japan. So I believe it would be beneficial for you, European countries as well.
Do you have any projects in Europe, or are you still waiting to get the first one?
You mean, what do you mean?
Okay, do you have any ongoing projects in Europe now?
No, not yet, but we would like to.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I'd like to thank you very much for your time, and we wish you a safe and pleasant journey back home over the weekend, yeah? Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. So, we've got Kisi Kang, who's, to be honest, you've been one of the more vociferous participants over the last 3 days. You've had a lot of insight and a lot of comment. Just want to get your views now. The event's now over, and a sort of summary of the 3 days. What you felt and what you've taken.
First one is this is a very unique event. We have here vendor, we have regulator, we have in the utility, and we have TSO. All kind of people working together, and we discussed issues. And maybe everybody is feeling the similar. Renaissance is just in the early stage. But in early stage, how can we prepare for real Renaissance? This is our roles. Today we have very good presentation from Czech Republic. How can we first step to prepare nuclear power plant? What is the first step? Nuclear power plant, it takes 20 years. Therefore, we cannot make just one day. He mentioned the very first step, how can we prepare first step? Also, we discussed the construction technology. Also, we discussed the long-term operation to a current nuclear power plant. Everything is almost perfect, but if you organize next this kind of in the workshop, mainly more focused in the real issues, like in the maintenance optimizations. Everybody wanted to improve the performance. Now we have only 81% performance world. How can we improve the 90 to 93%? Because of Finland or Slovenia or Switzerland, they have a 92, 93%. But some country is very, very low. How can this country will improve their performance through this meeting? This is, I think, one of the main subjects for next meetings. Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
Okay, thanks very much for your time, and I wish you a good weekend.
Okay, thanks for all organizers. But I felt some sorry. I really sorry. Today morning I went in the hotel receptions. I asked to buy a bunch of flower for I.N.E.D. I asked to hear. He said, "Oh, every week one time they are coming. Oh, can you order flowers?" She said, "Oh no, we cannot. Where is the flower shop here?" When hotel people said it takes 20 minutes here. How can 20 minutes I go there? But if I have a more carefully thinking about, I prepare some kind of gift. If I know early she's pregnant, I give something for her babies. Really, I'm sorry. I really felt.
We have a saying in England: it's the thought that counts. So the night the thought was there, it's a saying that we have. But thank you very much for everything, and especially for your input and participation in this event. It's you've made it a lot better, yeah.
Today morning we discussed, and then the agency. Our role is how can we transfer knowledge from developed country, underdeveloping country. These are our roles. Through this mechanism, we can do that. Therefore, in the near future, you will organize another meeting, and I will fully support. I fully involved to review programs, and then also I will send some typical formats. How can you preparing your programs? In this area, we are very specialty. Therefore, I will send this information for you. Thanks. Yeah.
Just be glad to be here. Just be glad to be here.